Techniques of understanding self. The individual dimensions of organizational behavior like perception, attitude, values, emotional intelligence, etc. change to some extent when an individual meets others in an organization and interacts with them. Some types of interactions are one-to-one basis, one-to-group basis, group-to-one basis, and group-to-group basis. In each basis of interaction, an individual faces different types of situations. How he affects the behavior of others and how his behavior is affected by others differ. Thus, one must develop the cooperative interpersonal skill like empathy, mutual trust, courtesy, etc. by understanding and practicing transactional analysis. According to Dr. Eric Berne, transactional analysis is the method for studying interactions between individuals. It is a social psychology and a technique to improve communication. This theory explains how people develop and treat themselves, how they relate and communicate with others, and offer suggestions and interventions which facilitate them to change and develop themselves. Transactional analysis is based on the premise that people can change and they have the right to be in the world and be accepted. Strokes. It is the recognition, attention, or responsiveness that one person gives another. Complementary transactions. When the stimulus and response patterns from one ego state to another are parallel. Cross-sections. When a person addresses ego states other than the ego state their partner is in. Withdrawal. When a person withdraws himself mentally from others. Rituals. When people behave with one another in a fixed manner. Game. A sequence of transactions that are either complementary, reciprocal, or ulterior. SWOT, SWOT, an acronym for strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Transactional analysis (TA) is a personality and psychotherapy for personal growth. It was originated by Eric Berne. An important aspect of TA is the ego states of a person. Dr. Berne formulated the model of ego states to explain how we are made up and how we relate to others. According to Dr. Berne, an ego state is a consistent pattern of feeling and experience directly related to a corresponding consistent pattern of behavior. He explains three ego states: parent, adult, and child. In some cases, a particular ego state in a person may dominate to such an extent that the other two are completely excluded from his personality. This is known as exclusion. A number of times, adults tend to use incorrect information which is present in their parent ego state or child ego state. This is called contamination. Strokes are the recognition, attention, or responsiveness that one person gives another. When the stimulus and response patterns from one ego state to another are parallel, the transaction is said to be complementary. There are 9 complementary transactions possible: adult-adult transaction, adult-parent transaction, adult-child transaction, parent-parent transaction, parent-adult transaction, parent-child transaction, child-parent transaction, child-adult transaction, and child-child transaction. When a person addresses ego states other than the ego state their partner is in, it is called cross transaction. Another class of transaction is the duplex or covert transaction, where the explicit social conversation occurs with an implicit psychological transaction. The way in which we structure time is likely to reflect the different hungers that we have. We all structure time in a variety of ways, such as through withdrawal, ritual, pastime, activities, and games. When a person withdraws himself mentally from others, it is called withdrawal. When people behave with one another in a fixed manner, it is called a ritual. It is a predictable exchange of words and is considered safe by a number of people. At times, people indulge themselves in conversation with other people in which they discuss some safe topics. People indulge themselves in such conversations to while away their time. Therefore, such conversations are called pastime. When a person directs his energy towards external sources like ideas, objects, and tasks, he is said to be occupied in an activity. A game is a sequence of transactions that are either complementary, reciprocal, or ulterior. The outcome of the game is usually predictable. People who repeatedly seek payoffs of anger or depression can be characterized as collecting stamps, similar to trading stamps that people save. Eric Burns said that the self-limiting decisions which are made by a person as a child for survival may result in dysfunctional behavior. According to Burns, such decisions end up in life script, i.e. the preconscious life plan that rules our life in many ways. The performance appraisal interview is a managerial tool that is used to assess performance and guide planning. SWOT SWOT is an acronym for strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Therefore, SWOT analysis, as the name suggests, is a method that analyzes the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of an individual or a firm. Johari window model was first described by Joe Luft and Harry Ingham while performing research on human personality at the University of California in 1950s. They called this model Johari after combining their first names. Johari window is a symbolic tool that helps individuals to better understand their interpersonal communication skills and relationships with other people. Under Johari window, region of my public self represents the areas of free activity, which includes things about the behavior and motivation of an individual that are known to all and can be predicted by others. Region of my blind spots represents the range of unknown qualities, which refers to motives that neither others nor the person can notice. Region of myself represent the area of avoidance, which includes things that a person does not reveal to others. This type of behavior of an individual is not predictable to others. Region of my unconscious self represent the blind mark, which includes certain parts of a person's personality that are recognizable for others, but he cannot recognize his part of himself. Mirror reflection technique is one of the techniques help in improving interpersonal relations. Dr. De Bono invented this method of 6 thinking hats in the early 1980s. It is used to incorporate internal thinking. The basis of the technique is that the human brain thinks in distinct ways. Using this technique, the thinking can be Transactional Analysis. Transactional Analysis (TA) is a personality and psychotherapy for personal growth. It was coined by Eric Berne. This concept is applied in clinical psychology, organizations, and educational institutes. According to him, a transaction is the unit of social intercourse. A transaction includes a transactional stimulus (TS) and a transactional response (TR). TS is referred to the verbal or non-verbal behavior of a person to acknowledge the presence of others when 2 or more people meet. TR is the response to TS by another person. Ego states. Important aspect of TA is the ego states of a person. Dr. Berne formulated the model of ego states to explain how we are made up and how we relate to others. Under transactional analysis, ego states behind every transaction are identified. According to Dr. Berne, an ego state is a consistent pattern of feeling and experience directly related to a corresponding consistent pattern of behavior. These ego states are drawn as 3 stacked circles and are amongst the building blocks of transactional analysis. These ego states are called parent, adult, and child, and categorize the ways we think, feel, and behave. The name of each ego state begins with a capital letter to denote the difference between ego states and actual parents, adults, and children. Ego states are not concepts like phase, id, ego, and superego. They are based on the real world behavior. Berne explains these ego states by describing their characteristic behaviors, language, feelings, and attitudes. Parent ego state. Parent ego state. A number of times while dealing with situations in life, we tend to behave like our parents. While pondering, we realize that our parents must have reacted in the same way as we have done in a particular situation. For instance, we tend to go into parent mode when we make general statements about the world. It is at such moments that we are in parent ego state. While growing up, we tend to take in belief systems, feelings, behaviors, and thoughts of our parents because we spend a lot of time with them. Children who live in a joint family tend to take in these things from other members as well, such as their uncle, aunt, granny, grandpa, etc. adult ego state. As adults, we're aware what is real and what is not. We are in touch with what is happening here and now and are usually in the present. During this period, our behavior is in tandem with our thoughts and feelings. We are able to solve our problems, take decisions by taking help from other people or by discussing our opinions with them. Spontaneity and intimacy are characteristics of this age. Thus, whenever we are doing any of these things, we are in adult ego state. Adult ego state through the middle circle, which touches the parent circle as well as child circle. This denotes that this state has a tendency to move out and enter into parent or child ego state. One can either move completely into one of these states or remain in adult ego state, wherein internally experiences parent ego state or child ego state. This movement into other ego states usually happens when a person is under stress. Sometimes a person simply uses the integration of positive aspects of both the ego states in response to a particular situation. Child ego state. When a person behaves, feels and thinks the way he did in childhood, the person is said to be in child ego state. It happens because the care that we get as children help us to grow into adults. Thus, it is evident that your childhood experiences would be integrated into our adult ego state. For example, a person who gets a poor assessment at work might respond the way he did as a child, i.e., he might look at the floor, cry, or suck. However, it does not mean that all the experiences related to the child ego state are negative. You may go to a person's house that smells like your own old house, which you left as a child. Now, this smell may make you nostalgic about all the fun things that you did in house. At times, some adults use some childhood memories to beat stress. A person usually gets into child ego state when he is experiencing anxiety or stress, or when he is extremely happy. Some bad experiences of childhood may even hamper the growth of adult. Some good experiences of childhood help us in becoming functional adults. While analyzing ego states of a person, the following aspects are relevant. Number 1. In the course of an interaction, a person is likely to display all the three ego states, though one ego state may be prominent. Number 2. One can observe the ego states of a person by observing not only the words used by him but also his postures, gestures, and face expressions. Number 3. Each ego state has positive as well as negative features. It can add to or subtract from a person's feeling of satisfaction. Next is exclusion. In some cases, a particular ego state in a person may dominate to such an extent that the other two are completely excluded from his personality. This is known as exclusion. For instance, a person may always be in nurturing or critical parent ego state and unable to use his or her child or adult ego state. Moreover, if a person is in excluding child ego state, he may not be able to live his life as a well-functioning adult and may not be able to take right decisions in his life. Exclusion is not a good phenomenon since a well-functioning person should be able to use all ego states as and when needed. When a person is in excluding ego state, he is unable to take advantage of other two ego states. Thus, is completely cut off from two-thirds of his potential as a human being. Therefore, it is important that all the ego states are present in a person and he is able to use them whenever required. Next is contamination. A number of times, adult tends to use incorrect information which is present in their parent ego state or child ego state. This is called contamination. This contamination is called prejudice when it comes from parent ego state. For instance, some people must have heard from their parents that men are always superior to women in intelligence and strength. Now, if a adult uses this information as it is without using his own intellect, then this information can said to be contaminated. Strokes. Strokes are the recognition, attention, or responsiveness that one person gives another. According to Dr. Byrne, a stroke is the fundamental unit of social action. He introduced the idea of strokes into transactional analysis. People seek recognition when they interact. This analysis is based on the works of Rance Spitz, a pioneer researcher in the field of child development. According to Spitz, infants that do not receive any strokes become prone to physical and emotional problems later in life. According to Byrne, positive as well as negative strokes are better than no strokes at all. For example, if you see your neighbor walking in the street, it is likely that you would say hi to him with a smile and he would respond with hello. His saying hello is a positive stroke. However, if your neighbor frowns at you in response to your hi, it would be a negative stroke. If he ignores you completely, it would be considered as no stroke. Lack of stroking has its consequences both on psychological well-being of people. The future of a person depends on the type of stroking that he receives since his childhood. In fact, strokes are a basic unit of motivation. Number 1. The quantity and quality of strokes serve as either positive or negative motivation for employees. A good share of satisfaction on work comes from the strokes available from other persons. Number 3. We can get satisfaction from the activities of the work itself, especially if what we are doing is as per our interest level and we can take responsibility for our work. For positive results on the job, it is essential to give people positive strokes. If a person does not get the positive strokes, he learns to manipulate the environment to get the strokes, and even if he does not get stroking after manipulating, he settles for a state that gives negative strokes. Negative strokes are sometimes good in order to maintain the social equilibrium and to complete a transaction. For instance, when a superior criticizes his subordinate for committing certain mistakes, the subordinate feels relieved. Further, people can make efforts to give positive strokes. Life positions. The other building block of transactional analysis is our opinion about ourselves in relation to people around us. I am okay, you are okay, people are in the get on which position. People in this position are confident, they are happy with their life and work. They work in cooperation and respect their colleagues, even if they disagree with one another on a particular issue. People who are in I am okay, you are not okay position usually have get rid of attitude. They easily get angry with other people and are hostile towards them. They feel that they are superior to others Thus, they belittle people who they feel are untrustworthy or incompetent. Such people are usually efficient in work and like to be in powerful positions. Not okay, you are not okay. People are in the get away from position. Such people usually remain sad and find themselves incompetent in comparison to others. They underestimate themselves and their talent, thus withdraw themselves from difficult situations at work. People who are in I am not okay, you are not okay position feels that they would get nowhere. People who fall under this category usually find themselves confused even in ordinary situations. They do not have an aim in life and do not feel like doing anything. It is observed that one of these positions dominate in each person's life. The desirable position is the one that provides an adult transaction. I am okay, you are okay. It shows the acceptance of self as well as others. The adult moves into okay position through psychological understanding and conscious choice. This position can be learned through education, understanding, and positive and mature psychological experiences. The other three positions are less effective and less psychologically mature. Types of transactions. When people interact, they involve in transactions with one another. There may be three types of transactions depending on the ego stage of the person who is involved in transaction. Number 1. Complementary transactions. When the stimulus and response patterns from one ego state to another are parallel, the transaction is said to be complementary. The message by a person gets the expected or predicted response from other person. Usually in each case, the sender and the receiver are satisfied and the communication is complete. A single and reciprocal transaction takes place when both partners address the ego state the other one is in. Such transactions are called complementary transactions. Example 1. A. Have you been able to design the presentation? B. Yes, I am going to email it to you. This exchange was adult to adult. Example 2. A. Would you like to miss this presentation and go to watch a film? B. Yes. Where should you go? This example was child to child. Example 3. A. You should have finished your homework by now. Parent to child. B. Will you stop irritating me? I'll do it myself. Child to parent. This kind of communication can continue for an indefinite period. Though it would surely end at some stage, yet the psychologically balanced exchange of strokes may continue for some time. There are 9 complementary transactions possible. Number 1. Adult transaction. Complementary transactions in this ego stage are very effective. The manager is in I am okay position, which is a rational position to be in. The manager in the adult ego state tries to reason out and usually succeeds in informing employees of issues and concerns in the organization. This is the best type of transaction for organizational functioning. Limitation. The elimination of child ego can make the transactions dull. Number 2. Adult parent transaction. Here, the manager attempts to use the information he has processed, but an employee in the parent ego prefers to use cliches and rules of the past. The employee tries to control and dominate the manager by using the parent ego. It can help a new manager understand the rules and guidance under which the employee operates. The employee in the parent ego may create hostile feelings towards managers with adult ego, which is not good in the long run. Number 3. Adult-child transaction. It is only effective when the manager is aware about the ego state of the employee. The manager can allow the employee in the child ego to be creative. Limitation. The employee in the child ego may act irrationally if the assumption of the manager turns out to be wrong. It can create situation of frustration for the manager as well as the employee. Number 4. Parent-parent transaction. When the manager is in the parent ego, he uses I am okay, you are not okay like position. In this state, he will be a source of rewards, rules, criticism and praises. The parent transaction can be beneficial in cases when the employee supports him. This situation may lead to unnecessary competition between him and the employee because the latter will promote his own ideas rather than those of the manager. Number 5. Parent-adult transaction. In this type of transaction, the manager may be frustrated because the employee will not perform as directed. The employee may feel frustrated because of the manager's failure to act as an adult. Due to this frustration, such a relationship may not last long. Number 6. Parent-child transaction. This may be the ideal transaction if the manager is interacting with parent ego and the employee is acting in his child ego. The employee finds this transaction advantageous as it eliminates responsibility and pressure, but he suffers from this interaction because he has to surrender his adult ego. Both of them may feel frustrated because they might feel that their personality is not developed. Number 7. Child-parent transaction. The manager in the child ego may contribute very little. Though creativity is one of the characteristics of child, the role of a manager goes beyond this creativity. In this transaction, the employee controls the manager in the child ego. Number 8. Child-adult transaction. Here, the adult employee in ego will control child manager. The employee may become discouraged, particularly when the manager makes irrational decisions. As a result, the manager may lose many good employees. Number 9. Child-child transaction. The manager in this state is not capable of leading his employees successfully and proves to be a liability to the organization. Both manager and employees behave irrationally, which is dangerous for the organizational performance. In this point of view, only adult transactions are good, and in some circumstances, parent-child complementary transactions might be good too. The second type of transaction is non-complementary transaction or cross transactions. When a person addresses ego state other than the ego state their partner is in, it is called cross transactions. This kind of a transaction usually results in communication failures. Now, reflect on the above examples jumbled upon a bit. Example 4. A. Have you been able to design that presentation? Adult to adult. B. Will you stop irritating me? I'll do it myself. Child to parent. In this case, it is an example of cross transaction and it can result in problems in the organization. Here, A may reply with a parent ego state. For instance, A. If you don't change your behavior, you will be fired. Example 5. A. Have you finished your work? Parent to child. B. I am just going to do it. Adult to adult. This transaction is a positive cross transaction. However, A might feel angry as he might think that B is trying to act responsibly even though he is not. In this case, the conversation might develop into A. I cannot never trust you, parent to child. B. Why don't you trust anything I say? Adult to adult. Now, this conversation might continue for a for an indefinite period. The cross transaction can also take place when the stimulus response lines are not parallel. Usually, this happens when the person who starts the transaction does not get the response that he expected from the other person. For instance, when a boss tries to communicate with his employee on an adult-to-adult basis, but the employee responds in child-to-parent basis, the communication gets blocked. Third type of transaction is ulterior transaction or duplex or convert transaction. Another class of transaction is the duplex or covert transaction, where the explicit social conversation occurs with an implicit psychological transaction. For instance, A. I want you to stay late in the office with me. Adult words. Body language signifies sexual intention. Flirtatious child. B. Why not? Adult response to adult statement. Winking or smiling. Child accept the hidden purpose. This is the most complex transaction because the communication has double meaning. It is usually conveyed in a way which is acceptable in the society. On the surface level, this communication has an obvious adult message, but it carries a hidden message on a psychological level. Such transactions are not desirable. Time structure. The way in which we structure time is likely to reflect the different hungers we have. We all structure time in a variety of ways. Number 1, withdrawal. Number 2, rituals. Number 3, points. Number 4, activities. Number 5, games. Withdrawal. When a person withdraws himself mentally from others, it is called withdrawal. It is not necessary that a person has to be alone to withdraw himself. He can withdraw himself even when he is at a party or when he is walking in a crowded place. Meditation, daydreaming, fantasizing are some of the common forms of withdrawal. When a person chooses to withdraw himself from others, it means that he is looking within himself for stimulation and time structure. Withdrawal for a short period is common because sometimes we need time with ourselves so that we can reflect on our thoughts, actions, feelings, experiences, and needs. This helps a person to improve himself once he is able to analyze himself. However, some people do not structure their time through withdrawal as they do not feel comfortable with their experiences and feelings. Such people structure their time in such a way that they can distract themselves from their personal thoughts and feelings. Also, some people spend a lot of time in withdrawal because they do not find comfortable sharing their thoughts and feelings with others. Spending a lot of time in withdrawal can lead to loneliness and depression. In severe cases, it may lead to autistic thinking and a person may lose touch with reality. Thus, withdrawal for a short duration to reflect on one's thoughts and actions is healthy and can help a person in self-development, but spending too much time in withdrawal can cause a number of problems. Next is rituals. When people behave with one another in a fixed manner, it is called a ritual. It is a predictable exchange of words and is considered safe by a number of people. Some of the examples of rituals are hi, good morning, and how are you? Many times when people are involved in a ritual exchange of words, it may seem as if they are reading from a script. In some cases, this exchange of words can be long as well. Next is pastime. At times, people indulge themselves in conversation with other people in which they discuss some safe topics like weather, fashion, sports, food, politics, etc. Such conversations are semi-ritualized. and do not have a fixed goal. People indulge themselves in such conversations to while away their time. Therefore, such conversations are called pastime. These conversations include more words than ritualized conversation, but do not involve the risk of closeness with other people. These conversations also give people a fair idea about other people's interests and ideas. Next is activities. When a person directs his energy towards external sources like ideas, objects, and tasks, he is said to be occupied in an activity. People spend maximum hours of their working time in an activity as they are usually found engaged in work, daily chores, and some hobbies. While performing these activities, they produce a number of strokes. Some are positive strokes and others are negative strokes. When a person is able to perform an activity successfully, he is likely to obtain a positive stroke in the form of appreciation from his colleagues, friends, and family members. However, when a person is not able to perform that activity in a proper manner, he would get negative strokes, especially if he is working with people who like to find faults in other people's work. Some of the direct rewards and strokes from these activities are paycheck and school mark sheets, and these are some of the cheap sources of strokes for people. While indulging themselves in activities, people are able to find other settings for time structuring as well. Next, games. A game is a sequence of transactions that are either complementary, reciprocal, or ulterior. The outcome of the game is usually predictable. One of the basic characteristics of games is that there is a switch in players' roles towards the end. Usually parent, adult, and child ego states play these games, and there are a fixed number of players in them. However, there can be a shift in an individual's role and people may play multiple roles. Dr. Byrne recognized a number of games and concluded that irrespective of when, where, or by whom these games were played, each game had similar structures with respect to the number of players or roles. The rules of the game and the game's goals were also same. Each game has a payoff for players who are playing in such as the desire for earning sympathy, contentment, vindication, or other emotions that generally support the life script. The antithesis of a game or the way to break the game is to find ways which can deprive the players of the payoffs of the game. Students of transaction analysis have found out that people who are used to playing a game are ready to play it even as different actors from what they initially were. The complexity of the transaction analysis model leaves it open to manipulation. Or games, players are ready to assume a state in cases where they need the help of other players. A parent state when they want the other players to do something for them. Usually, it is seen that a number of relationships get damaged during the course of the game, and the type of game the players play is influenced by their life state. Let us understand these games in detail. Games. Learned models of behavior are known as games, and a number of people prefer playing their favorite games with different people and with different intensities. The essential aspect of games is that they are grouped or covert exchanges of strokes. A game is a recurring series of covert transactions with a beginning, middle, and end, and a payoff. The payoff is a hidden advantage that motivates the player to participate. Types. First degree games include those games which are acceptable in the social spheres of the players. These games do not end up in major traumas, but mild upsets are quite likely in these games. Second degree games are those games that have higher stakes and are played with people who are close to you. These games are likely to have higher negative payoffs. Third degree games can cause severe damage to parties that are involved in these games. Some of the players may end up in jail, hospital and morgue. In 2002, Chris Davidson 2002 said that fourth degree games involve world politics and the consequences may affect all communities, countries and even the world. All these games differs in the time that passes during the course of the games. Some games may take only some seconds or minutes, while some other games may take weeks, months or years. Some of the reasons why these games are played are: number 1, to structure their time. Next, to obtain strokes. Next, to validate parental injunctions and to further the life script. Next, to obtain or give a high stroke when intimacy is blocked and distance is maintained. Next, to uphold the parent's life position by giving evidence that self or others are not okay. Next, to make people predictable. Next, to maintain the substitute feeling and the system of thoughts, beliefs and actions that accompany these feelings. According to Eric Byrne, most common themes of these games include YDYB, why don't you? Yes, but historically it is the first game that was discovered. IFWY, if it were not for you. WAHM, why does this always happen to me? YMD, see what you made me do. UZMIT, you got me into this. LHIT, look how hard I have tried. ITHY, I am only trying to help you. LYAHF, let's you and him fight. Barnes says that there is no logic behind playing these games and usually or person's parents that interact with other persons child state during these games. Adult to adult interaction is rare in these games. Stumps. People who repeatedly seek payoffs of anger or depression can be characterized as collecting stumps, similar to trading stumps that people save. The color of stumps depends on the feelings that are collected, such as red stumps for anger and brown stumps for depression. Collecting stumps allows people to eventually trade in all of their stumps on major emotional release, such as a hostile explosion or a suicide attempt. Brackets. As children, some of our feelings are encouraged by others, while other feelings are prohibited. In order to obtain strokes, unconsciously we usually decide to feel only those feelings that are encouraged or permitted. When we grow up, we continue to hide our real feelings and continue to show feelings that we were permitted to us as children. Such substitute feelings are called racket feelings. When we do not express our racket feelings and instead store it up, It is called saving a stump. During the course of these games, both parties express their racket feelings in the form of sequence of transactions. Next, sweet search. Sweet search is one of Eric Barnes' psychological analogies in which he describes how two existential or psychological positions are held by a person at the same time. One of these positions is implicit, whereas the other one is explicit. Implicit position is subconscious and explicit position is conscious. The sweet search illustrates the duality of fight against what we desire. The analogy is to visualize that a person is wearing a sweatshirt which has an explicit message on the front side and an implicit message on the back side of the shirt. Every message has its own existential position, usually conflicting messages. Some of the examples are as follows. Front: someone please love me. Back: not you stupid. Front: keep your distance. Back: a little closer please. Front: please tell me what to do. Back: so I can tell you why that cannot work. Sweet search occurs when a person disowns an ego state, such as the angry child or the susceptible child ego state. This magnifies the ego state that is functioning at a conscious level. Sweet search are good examples of the nature of the psychological games one subconsciously starts and participates in. A number of times, the only way you realize that you have been playing a subconscious game is when you feel bad once the game is over. An innocent question may begin this game, but a person feels bad by the end of it and does not even realize what the cause of this bad feeling is. Scripts. Eric Barnes said that the self-limiting decisions which are made by a person as a child for survival may result in dysfunctional behavior. According to Barnes, such decisions end up in life script, i.e., the preconscious life plan that rules our life in many ways. The aim of transactional analysis psychotherapy is to change the life script. The objective of other applications of transactional analysis is to replace violent organizational or societal scripting with non-violent behavior. A number of theorists and researchers have shown interest in the autobiographical recollections, narrative approaches, and life stories in order to understand human experience and behavior. The concepts as such, life scripts, script decisions, and redecisions in transactional analysis are referred in the psychological culture with the help of concepts like narratives, maladaptive schemas, self-narratives, story schemas, story grammars, personal myths, personal event memories, self-defining memories, nuclear skins, gendered narratives, narrative coherence, narrative complexity, core self-beliefs, and self-concept. All these concepts show life stories, episodes, myths, characters, plots, etc. Barnes suggested that the decisions taken by people in their childhoods shape their life script to a great extent. One of the hypotheses of script theory is that some of the life tragic scripts such as murder, suicide, or use of drugs are chosen by people in their childhood. Some of the regular repetitive games that people play within themselves support these choices. The evolution of the concept of scripts is an example the way Barnes contributed to or anticipated major trends in behavioral science. According to the narrative literature, people are bound to follow some preconceived behavioral paths, and many of these paths are not good for them. The concept of a script tie many theoretical and empirical trends in cognitive, developmental, personality, and cultural psychology. According to Jeffrey Young, schemas help people to understand their experiences in a meaning manner. He also believes that it is possible to restructure schemas since these are formed due to the experiences of people over a lifetime. Redecision therapy, which is a transactional analytic practice, is based on this theory of Young and concentrates on a redecision of the earlier decisions which form the basis of a person's script. Young elaborates this theme through the concept of maladaptive schemas. The view that life scripts can be redecided has an important role to play in cognitive behavioral therapy. Manual for Depression prepared by American Psychological Associations, Parson, Davidson, and Tompkins, 2001. Schema sense methods are outlined as techniques which are formed to restructure the maladaptive core beliefs, as these beliefs are responsible for depression. Advantages and disadvantages of transactional analysis. Transactional analysis has some advantages and disadvantages. First, we'll discuss about advantages. Some of the advantages of transactional analysis are as follows. Number 1. Positive thinking. Transactional analysis results in positive approach towards life as well as positive actions. The application of transactional analysis can improve the trust and credibility felt by the employee towards their organization. Some specific areas for developing positive thinking through transactional analysis are stroking, positive reinforcement, active listening, time structuring. Number 2. Interpersonal effectiveness. It emphasizes complementary transaction which ensures complete communication and problems solving approach. The effective managers may be able to analyze transactions with employees and identify the ego states. A better understanding makes the employees more effective, comfortable, and confident. Number 3. Motivation. Transactional analysis can be applied in motivation, where it helps in satisfying human needs through complementary team actions and positive approach. Positive approach can be achieved by job satisfaction. Number 4. Organizational development. Transactional analysis can help in organizational development by maintaining and promoting adult-adult transaction. Next, to give an okay to the natural child. Next, to quickly identify an unbalanced cross transaction. Number 5. It helps in developing new ways of working that increase morale and productivity. Number 6. It helps a person understand himself better and develop a greater awareness of the interaction around him and his influence upon them. Number 7. It helps in identifying the problem areas in organizational culture and barriers to individuals' successful development. It also helps a person realize the actions that need to be taken to remedy the situation. Now, let us discuss the disadvantages. Number 1. The disadvantage of transactional analysis in organizational use is that it is apparently simple and popular, and this has resulted in the over-commercialization of this concept. Due to this reason, many untrained instructors also use this concept and end up with causing more problems than finding solutions. Number 2. Transactional analysis needs a lot of trust and honesty in the organization, which may not be present in large business enterprises due to their competitive environment. Number 3. Since transactional analysis is a simple therapeutic technique, its terminology can be used by people to describe complex behaviors, and this can cause problems in the organization. Transactional analysis has been criticized as being little more than a warmed oversimplified psychoanalytical theory. Number 4. In addition to this, specific detail about actual counselor behavior and practices, which explain the reasons and the ways transactional analysis benefits the clients, is not present. Number 5. The findings of behaviorism suggest that the stroking concept is extremely general in nature. It is said that a lot can be gained theoretically as well as in clinical practice from a differentiation into various patterns of stroking by borrowing from the interval, ratio, and intermittent schedules of conditioning. Number 6. Armed with this explicit knowledge, the transactional analysis therapist, as stroker of new adaptive behaviors in his patients, might enormously increase his curative potency. In spite of the fact that there are a number of disadvantages of transactional analysis, research has shown that transactional analysis is extremely effective in treating diverse psychopathologies. Transactional analysis tips. Number 1. Transactional analysis tips for performance interviews. The performance appraisal interview is a managerial tool that is used to assess performance and guide planning. Employees are evaluated for skills, productivity, and communication. A good interview requires communication skills and preparation. Interview preparation. Since the performance appraisal interview usually covers a predetermined length of time, check when the last assessment occurred. If you have the organizational strategic plan handy, take it out and find the goals for the time period. Remember the job description. Note anything that was exceptional or lacking in your own minds. Practice talking about it by conversing with other employees or talking to a friend. Performance reviews may make you feel under fire, but not if you have practiced talking about your own performance and can do so with ease. Performance review questions. Performance review sessions commonly include a set of questions asking the employee to assess his or her own skills and performance. Next, the employee may be asked to assess his or her motivation to complete tasks. Think carefully about what motivates you. Be prepared with a better answer than money. Employees may find motivation in stress, seeing results, or helping other people. Of course, nothing is wrong with being motivated by a paycheck, but giving a more thoughtful answer allows your employers to see your personality and goals more clearly. Employee disposition. Some performance appraisal interviews include a test of employees' disposition or personality. This kind of test usually includes multiple choice tests where an employee is required to choose the best response available. Do not try to guess the purpose of the questions, just answer honestly, thinking about how you would really react in a work situation. Do not get preoccupied with thinking about how your answer will be interpreted, since all employees work differently, and this is one of reasons for performance appraisals. Productivity. The performance appraisal interview is important to management staff. It lets them know which employees are producing results that are in tandem with the expectations of an organization. More importantly, it analyzes which employees are not performing in accordance to the company standards and why. In order to be prepared, keep accurate records of your work along with dates. Carry your business calendar or planner for reference purposes. Documenting your work accurately will reflect positively on your work habits as well. Next, skills. The employee performance appraisal may include the assessment of skills. If you score high on the skills assessment but the tangible results from your work do not reflect it, then management staff decide why skills have not been utilized successfully. If any circumstances in the office have prevented you from using your skill properly, be honest. However, do not revert to making excuses. Family concerns and other personal issues affecting work should not be a discussion topic during a performance appraisal interview. This throws a bad light on the professionalism of a person. However, the office environment itself may be an issue. For instance, perhaps an excess of noise is affecting performance. This is realistic interference that can be easily fixed and should be discussed during an evaluation. Next is development planning with subordinates. Beckhardt had defined organization development as an effort planned, organized wide, and managed from the top to increase organization effectiveness and help through planned interventions in the organization's processes using behavioral science knowledge. Nielsen's views on OD explains that today's organizations function in a fast-changing environment. As a result, a significant asset for an organization is its capability to manage change. And for people to stay healthy and real, now reflect on the following definition of organization development. Organization development is the attempt to influence the members of an organization to expand their candidness with each other about their views of the organization and their experience in it, and to take greater responsibility for their own actions as organization members. The postulation behind organization development is that when people follow both these objectives at the same time, it is expected that they would find out new ways to work together, which they find more useful for achieving their own goals and organizational goals. In cases when this does not happen, such activity helps them understand the reason why it did not happen, and this helps them make meaningful choices about what needs to be done in light of this understanding. Many experts believe that the following definition of organization development characterizes the chief focal point and driving force of today's organization development practitioners. Organization development is a system-wide application of behavioral science knowledge to the planned development and reinforcement of organizational strategies, structures, and process for improving an organization's effectiveness. Next, understanding organization development. There is a lot of similarity between the system of organizations and the system of human beings. After all, human beings make the organization. Due to this fact, it might be useful if aspects of the field of organization development are compared to the aspects of the field of medicine while trying to understand the field of organization development. For example, there are similarities between the study of organizational behavior and the study of psychology and sociology. Thus, organizational development practitioners can work like organizational physicians to improve the efficiency of people and organizations by number 1, forming good relations with main personnel in the organization, usually known as entering and contracting with the organization. Number 2, researching and assessing systems in the organization in order to understand dysfunctions and or objectives of the organizational systems. Diagnosing the organizational systems. Number 3. Recognizing a process or interventions in order to improve efficiency of the organization and people who are working in an organization. Number 4. Applying a process for improving efficiency. Techniques of plan change in the organization. Number 5. Assessing the ongoing efficiency of the process and their outcome. The Organization Development Network states that organization development is a dynamic, values-based approach to system change in organizations and communities. It strives to build the capacity to achieve and sustain a new desired state that benefits the organization or community and the world around them. Next, tips for selection. Some of the tips for selection are as follows. Number 1. Laying out clear requirements. The first step is to lay out all the requirements clearly. The organization should clearly explain what are the expectations from the person who would take the position for which interviews have been conducted. The organization should also explain what kind of skills and attitudes are required to perform the responsibility of that position. Next, probing the candidates. While conducting the interviews, ask various questions related to what they have done or would do in different situations, check their knowledge and ask them to exhibit actual skills. Next, consider how they complement other team members. By asking these questions, try to find out how their attitudes and approaches would complement other team members. Next, make sure that the chosen candidate is suitable for the job. Organizations should not choose a partially suitable candidate, as this may cause problems in the organization in the long run. On the face of it, these tips seem relatively straightforward. However, doing them correctly is not easy. SWOT analysis, SWOT analysis. SWOT, SWOT is an acronym for strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Therefore, SWOT SWOT analysis, as the name suggests, is a method that analyzes the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of an individual or firm. People can use this technique to find out where they are now and where they could be. It is a systematic study and identification of those aspects and strategies that are important for the development of an individual or an organization. Strategy should be aimed at improving not only strengths and utilize opportunities, but also get rid of weaknesses and effectively deal with threats. The process of strategy formulation begins with analyzing situations with the help of SWOT SWOT analysis. Under this analysis, the key information is written on a single page. Here, the objective is to see your present position in relation to the issue you wish to deal with. It is extremely important to understand the problem thoroughly before SWOT SWOT analysis is done, else a person would not be able to understand the basis on which he needs to analyze his strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Here, we would deal with self SWOT SWOT in relation to techniques to understand self. Self-SWOT analysis means to examine self in the light of four parameters what are involved in this analysis. It is aimed at enhancing self-understanding and self-appreciation. Once a person is able to understand his strengths and weaknesses in relation to the problem in hand, he will be able to concentrate on his strengths to solve that problem and protect himself from his weaknesses that can cause problems for him while dealing with that issue. Moreover, opportunities can also be observed which might not only solve the problem but also prove advantageous in the long run. In such cases, threats are those factors that a person identifies as some unforeseen problems which he might face while dealing with this issue. If self-SWOT analysis is done objectively and with honesty, it can prove to be helpful in dealing with the given issue. One of the examples of SWOT SWOT analysis is strengths. In the context of self-SWOT analysis, strengths are not referred to job skills alone, but those resources the person has which can help him while dealing with the situation in hand. Sometimes, strengths are referred to as a person's unique selling points, things that you learned through your hobby, tactics that you absorbed while playing sports. Your sense of humor are some of the examples of strengths. It is difficult to find out your strengths in isolation, but while scrutinizing an issue, you might be able to find out some inherent qualities in you which can help you in solving this problem. Thus, your strengths in one issue may turn out to be your weakness while dealing with another issue. For instance, your sense of humor may prove to be your strength in the present situation, but the same quality may become your weakness in case you are dealing with a complex situation. Weaknesses. Your weaknesses are those areas in which there is a potential for you to improve and develop yourself. Some people think that it is easy to identify weaknesses, but one needs to analyze them objectively for their correct assessment. For instance, if a person is sympathetic in nature, it may be considered a good human trait, but this sympathetic nature can cause a problem if a person has to lead a team. One needs to assess all the weaknesses in the context of the given issue so that the issue can be dealt successfully. Subjectively, in the identification of weaknesses can cause problem to the extent that issue may remain unresolved. Next is opportunities. In order to find opportunities, it is important not only to examine the issue entirely but also to find out the opportunities that might exist. For instance, if a production manager has to reduce production of the company's goods due to fall in the demand of the product, he needs to find opportunities in the industry he is a part of. He might see this problem as an opportunity to enhance the products which his company might require in future. Threats. Every situation has some threats, but a person needs to identify these threats and overcome them with the help of these strengths and opportunities. Though it is not difficult to identify the threats, but the difficulty lies in finding the difference between impossible and unlikely situations. Usually unlikely and unexpected situations pose a danger in resolving an issue. If a person knows that these problems might occur, he can prepare himself to deal with them in an efficient manner. It is important to understand that self-SWOT analysis is not the evaluation of one's ability. It is the assessment of a person on the 4 parameters. It is like telling everything about you to your doctor for treatment. However, in this case, the difference is that the doctor and patient is the same person. Johari window. Johari window model was first described by Joe Luft and Harry Ingham while performing research on human personality at the University of California in 1950s. They called this model Johari after combining their first names. It is a symbolic tool that helps individuals to better understand their interpersonal communication skills and relationships with other people. This model is not about measuring the personality of an individual. It is rather about the way of looking at how a personality is expressed. This can also be used as a tool to improve self-awareness. According to Luft and Ingham, there are many aspects of the personality of an individual for which he is not open about, and There are many things that he keeps only to himself. At the same time, there are many aspects in his personality which he can see but is not aware of. Over the years, many people have adapted this technique and use different terminology to explain it. This model is referred as disclosure feedback model of self-awareness and information processing tool. The four perspectives of this window are known as regions, quadrants, or areas. In Johari window technique, he can draw a four-box grid that includes a fourth group of traits that are unknown to him. The four regions represent the following. Region of my public self represents the areas of free activity, which includes things about the behavior and motivation of an individual that are known to all and can be by others. Next, region of my blind spots represents the range of unknown qualities, which refers to motives that neither others nor the person can notice. Next, region of my hidden self represents the area of avoidance, which includes things that a person does not reveal to others. This type of behavior of an individual is not predictable to others. Next, region of my unconscious self represents the blind mark, which includes certain parts of a person's personality that are recognizable for other, but he cannot recognize this part of himself. Let us look at these regions in detail. Johari region 1, also called the area of free activity, represents those things that a person knows about him and other people know this part of the person. This includes behavior, emotions, experiences, skills, opinions, attitude of a person. Every group should aim at developing this area, since people are productive and efficient when they work in this area. That is why it is also called open area, as this is that part of the self that everyone is and should be aware of. It is the space wherein there is a lot of space of operation and effective communication between people without any disruption, conflict, and confusion. The old team members are likely to have more an area than new members of the team have. It is because when a person joins a team, very little is known about that person to the team members, but gradually team members help him increase his opinion knowing about his blind spots. In some cases, open area can also be increased if all team members try to know the hidden self of new team member. The new members can also initiate to expand this area by soliciting feedback from the old members. In this case, all members can help the person to expand his open area if they give him feedback in a proper manner. Harsh feedback or looking at that person critically may stop the new team member to share his true feelings with them. If this happens, then it is not good for the team, as the team may not be able to seek cooperation from the new team member. Thus, it is important that all team members give feedback to new team member in a way that he feels encouraged and at the same time tries to learn from his mistakes. Managers and team leaders play an important role in creating an environment in the organization in which people communicate in an honest, positive, constructive manner. If open area of all the team members is known to everyone, it helps in the proper functioning and growth of an organization. Johari region 2, or my blind spots, is that part of the person which is known to others but not known to the person himself. Every organization aims at reducing this area by giving feedback to people. Reducing this part helps the person to increase the open area and thereby helps in the proper functioning of an organization. It also helps the person to enhance self-awareness. When a person has a large blind area, he would not be as productive as he is capable of. Blind area can also be referred as ignorance of a person about himself. When a person is ignorant of his strengths and weaknesses, he would not be able to develop himself. For instance, visualize how it feels when a person walks in a dark room where he cannot see things around him. He would not be able to work efficiently. Ignorance is equivalent to darkness. Thus, it is important for a person to know himself. Some people whom we call thick-skinned people are likely to have a large blind area. Thus, leaders should make efforts to give correct and non-judgmental feedback to their team members so that they can reduce this area. However, extreme care should be taken not to hurt a person by avoiding giving harsh or extremely critical feedback. Taking the feedback in the right spirit can help the person to achieve self-actualization, as mentioned in Maslow's hierarchy of needs development and motivation model. Johari region 3 or hidden self is that part of person which he is aware of but keeps it hidden from others. It is obvious that every person has some things, feelings or secrets that he does not like to reveal to others. As long as this part of the person is not related to work, it is desirable to keep these things hidden, as it is important for every person to have a private self. However, most of times, a person keeps this part of himself hidden because he is afraid to be judged or judged by others. When this hidden part affects a person's work, it is better to disclose it in a manner the person feels comfortable. The hidden self of a person may also result in misunderstanding, confusion, and poor communication within the team. Disclosing this part can help him increase his open area and enable him to seek cooperation and of his team members. However, how much should be disclosed, to whom, and at what place should be at the person's discretion so that the person does not end up increasing his problems and vulnerability in the process of disclosure. The work culture of the organization plays a major role as to how much their employees feel comfortable to share their hidden self. A person's nature, behavior, and attitude towards things also affect how much a person would disclose his hidden self. Feedback of the team leaders in a proper manner can make a person comfortable to share some aspects of his hidden self. An organization which encourages its employees to share their hidden self related to work can grow by leaps and bounds. Johari region 4 or unconscious self is that part of the person which the person and people around him are not aware of. This may include a person's aptitude and his latent abilities. For instance, the person himself or people around him may realize that he is capable of acting calmly and efficiently in a critical situation. Thus, he has the quality of a good leader. This fact until that time was not known to anyone, thus was a part of unconscious self. However, when the part came to light, it helped the person realize his qualities, which may help in the growth of the person as well as the organization. Advantages and disadvantages of Johari window. Advantages: technique can help a person and an organization to consider multiple perspectives during needs assessment. Through a Johari window, you can decide what kind of information should be gathered during needs assessment, processes that should be used in your assessment, and the available resources which can be used to collect information. Disadvantages: this technique is more limiting than others because it does not help in generating ideas about the next step that a person or an organization should take. The Johari window technique needs all stakeholders to value the perspectives and differences between groups within the organization. Case: the port story. Ravi was a school dropout. He joined the new Mangalore Port Trust (NMPT) in the warehouse section. His job was to unload boxcars that used to supply materials to the local industries in the area. After 2 weeks on the job, Ravi was amazed how little work the men in the warehouse section accomplished. It seemed that they were forever standing around talking or wasting their time. Whenever there was work, they went and hid themselves till the work was done. Many a times, Ravi found himself alone unloading a boxcar while the other members in the group were off messing around in some other place. When Ravi complained to his co-workers, they made it very plain that if he did not like it, he could go home and find another job. But if he complained to the supervisor, he would later regret. Ravi was deliberately excluded from the informal activities of the group, such as talking or playing games. Ravi wondered why his co-workers did so little work, because the money was good. He could not take it anymore and finally confronted an old worker with the question of why they shirked work. The old worker replied, "Son, if you were here as long as I have been, you would be just like us." Questions. Number 1. Why did not the group accept Ravi? Number 2. Do we agree with the old worker's last statement in the case? Why or why not? Mirror reflection techniques. Mirror reflection technique is one of the techniques that help in improving interpersonal relations. According to the magic formula, in case of conflict between two people, the person who is aware would be able to tell himself that even though there is conflict between them, but the fact remains that they care for each other. It is because the aware person is capable of looking into the mirror of his mind and can realize that their different stories have caused anxiety and detachment. Their love is the unifying truth. When one of the persons understands the reason behind their anxiety and accepts the common ground of care both of them have, the hostility begins to melt away. The person who is not aware might say and feel negative things about the other one. It is because he is looking only at his own story and is not able to understand the story of another person. His self-deceit and unawareness might also cause alienation between them. He might feel that the other person is mean or does not care. However, if the person understands that he needs to look into the mirror of his mind and understand the other person's perspective, the conflict would resolve immediately. The conflict remains unresolved when both people are looking at their own story and controlled by their own thinking that the other person is at fault. Their unawareness is not letting them see that A common ground also exists which they are not able to notice. When people look at things the way they appear, they are only looking at the superficial aspect. However, once they observe things deeply, they would be able to find similarities and common ground. Different stories become the cause of anxiety and take us away from who we are. Stories of entrapment and separation result in loneliness and stress. A person's love, freedom, powerfulness, and creativity depend on how much his story allows him these things. Technique makes us self-aware. The fact is that no one is right till the time they're not aware of their story. Each person is guilty till the time he believes that lie about him, and he is innocent only because he did not realize that lie. We tend to blame other people due to our self-deceit, but guilt is a interpretation till the time we do not know what we do. There is usually a conflict within a person's mind between his story about himself and the truth about himself. According to this technique, every word and thought of a person is always about himself. When we apply this technique, we would be able to rebound the projections you have made upon the other. For instance, when you say that other person is selfish, this technique directs you to observe your own selfish thinking. When you appraise someone by saying that she is beautiful, you are there to observe your own beautiful thinking. When you judge someone by saying that he is stupid, directed to observe your own thinking about stupidity. When a person is not able to own these projections, his story continues to control him. In this case, the person feels victimized and tries to control the things or people which he feels are controlling him. Magic mirror gives people the gift of self-knowledge. It also suggests that a person plays the role of a good or a bad person so that you can observe these qualities in yourself. When you see other person's anger, it makes you realize your own anger. This kind of projection comes through your own power of imagination, and your beliefs play the role of lens that project them. Six thinking hats technique. Dr. D. Bono invented this method of six thinking hats in the early 1980s. It is used to incorporate lateral thinking. The basis of the technique is that the human brain thinks in distinct ways. Using this technique, the thinking can be accessed and hence planned for use in a structured way. This allows people to develop strategies for thinking about particular issues. When this method was developed, Dr. Bono made a network of trainers who were authorized to introduce this method in various organizations. It is a course on creative and critical thinking which helps people become efficient thinkers. The advantage of using this technique is that everybody focuses on the same kind of thinking at the same time. Thus, this technique is also popular for its parallel thinking, which helps in minimizing conflict and promoting progress. When heads are sensed, all people get into different mode of thinking. This technique helps into the time spent in meetings. While using this technique, organization may use just one hat or combination of hats for examining an issue. Let us try to understand six thinking hats in detail. Number 1. White hat thinking. This kind of thinking includes thinking over facts, figures, information needs and gaps. When a person says that they need some white hat thinking, he wants to convey to his members that it is time to analyze the database instead of arguing or debating on the issue at hand. Number 2. Red hat thinking. This type of thinking includes expressing instincts, emotions, and feelings. The red hat permits a person to express his instinct without justifying it to others. It is not common that people put on red hat during a discussion, but it may be introduced if logic can be given to support that intuition or instinct. It is observed that when people put on red hat, their emotions are real, but the logic seems to be forced one or irrelevant. This hat permits the person to express emotions on the subject of discussion. Number 3. Black hat thinking. Black hat thinking is the hat of judgment and vigilance. A lot of people believe that it is a negative or an inferior hat, but this is not so. It is one of most valuable hats. This hat is used to reveal why a particular suggestion is not in tandem with the facts and present policy or system. Whenever a person gives such kind of remark on any suggestion, he should be able to logically explain his opinion on this act. Number 4. Yellow hat thinking. This kind of thinking brings out the reasons behind something would work and why it would benefit the organization. It is usually put on by people when they want to assess the results the proposed action might bring and to find something of value in some past event or strategy. Green hat thinking. Put on your green hat means you need to be creative, suggest some alternatives, and propose some ideas. This hat is generally put on during discussions when they want some changes to be made in the system and wish to seek suggestions from their employees. Last, number 6. Blue hat thinking. Blue hat is the overview or process control hat. It focuses on thinking about the subject. This hat thinking is related to metacognition. In an organization, people say, put on your blue hat, when they want people to think what needs to be thought about the situation in hand. Thus, planning to resolve any issue is done through blue hat thinking.